Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today we are looking at the final Doctor Who 60th Anniversary Special, The Giggle, written by Russell T Davies, directed by Chana Button. As always, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place because I do these unscripted, and I may possibly decide to talk about spoilers. This is your only warning if you do not wish to be spoiled. The Giggle is available on Disney Plus. Internationally, or in the UK, it is available on BBC iPlayer. And I know I usually give that generic spoiler warning, but it is doubly important in this case because I cannot talk about or review The Giggle without talking about spoilers. And we were doing so good. This was shaping up to be great. It was shaping up to be the best of the anniversary specials. And then the last 20 minutes happened. Because Russell T Davies decided to go and be Russell T Davies. I have made this clear throughout my videos, I have not been a fan of Russell T Davies as a showrunner for Doctor Who. I do not like his ideas. I did not like how he did the 10th Doctor era. But throughout the first two specials, and throughout most of this one, it seemed like there were seeds of improvement. It seems like he recognized the criticisms, not just from me, from others, that his era had, and was striving to improve them. And then big, bombastic, stupid idea. And we are going to talk about that, don't get me wrong, but there were a lot of thoughts I had on this episode. As always, I have my notes with me just to kind of keep me on track, but here was the note-taking process. Star Beast, I took half a page of notes. Wild Blue Yonder, I took 3/4 of a page of notes. The Giggle is a page and a half. There is a lot to say on this episode, and because I am doing this unscripted, technically just vlogging, I am not sure I will get to all of it. But I just forgot about this. Just comparing this to Russell T Davies' previous eras. One of Russell T Davies' big problems was he always felt he had to one-up himself with every finale. So, Doomsday had to be bigger than The Parting of the Ways. And then Last of the Time Lords had to be bigger than Doomsday. And then Journey's End had to be bigger than Last of the Time Lords. And then The End of Time had to be bigger than Journey's End. And here's the problem. In anything, even writing, even scope, you keep going. You cannot go up endlessly. You're going to plateau. And like I just kind of said, for the most part, it feels like Davies listened to the criticisms from his previous era and strove to avoid or improve his own tropes in writing. But this feels like a mindset that has not changed since his previous era. It feels like The Giggle had to be bigger than The End of Time. And often, this leads to, at best, his finales being kind of divisive. There are people who like them, there are people who have issues with them. And at worst, his finales being the worst episodes in his run. Last of the Time Lords and The End of Time. So, that's where we're starting at, just my personal thoughts. On the whole, the 60th anniversary specials have been a mixed bag for me. Star Beast was mid. It had some good moments. It was fine, but nothing really stand out. Wild Blue Yonder was an amazing, phenomenal episode. But it was a terrible anniversary special. And then The Giggle, Russell T Davies crashed and burned in the last 20 minutes. Again, for me personally, I'm not going to say this is going to be a thing for the fandom. I don't normally agree with the fandom. Again, the 10th Doctor era is terrible, and the Chibnall era is the best era New Who ever had. But for me personally, the 60th anniversary specials, this is a remembrance of the Daleks' Silver Nemesis situation. If you're not familiar with Classic Who, I should have turned my light on because the sun's setting now. If you're not familiar with Classic Who, let me explain real quick. Actually, let me cut away while I turn my ring light on, and then I'll explain real quick. Sorry about that. Now, as I was saying, if you're not familiar with Classic Who, let me kind of explain. Let me set the stage real quick to kind of make the comparison I'm about to make. Season 25. Sylvester McCoy's second season as the Seventh Doctor and the penultimate season of the show. It also fell into Doctor Who's 25th anniversary. The official 25th anniversary story was a Cyberman story called Silver Nemesis. But the anniversary nods were weak, and Silver Nemesis is generally regarded as a bad story. It has its defenders, there are people who like it, but generally it is regarded as a bad story. So much so, in fact, that people consider the true 25th anniversary story Remembrance of the Daleks. It was the opener for season 25, and even though it wasn't marketed as the 25th anniversary story, it had all these nods to the 25th anniversary. You know, the Doctor was facing the Daleks. There was a lot of lore throughout the show's history that came into play in a really important manner in it. You know, it was set in 1963, the year Doctor Who began. It was set at Coal Hill School, where the first episode of An Earthly Child kind of took place. The point I'm getting to is that Silver Nemesis was the official 25th anniversary story, but the fandom generally considers Remembrance of the Daleks the true 25th anniversary story. And I feel like right now, that's kind of where I'm at. These are the Star Beast, Wild Blue Yonder, and the Giggle are the official 60th anniversary story. But for me, the true 60th anniversary story is Power of the Doctor. Moving on. And I want to say, too, in that regard, I honestly think the Giggle of these three, of this trilogy, is the best 60th anniversary story. It's got all these great nods to it, you know, an enemy from the first Doctor era. And there's much more great nods, like Mel, Bonnie Langford is back. She is a recurring character in this. And there's all sorts of nods both to the show itself, and there's sort of kind of meta nods. Like, one I will say right now, before we get into the spoilers itself, is that I feel like, in a way, not in any meaningful way, this story is kind of an homage to Time in the Ronnie, Sylvester McCoy's first story, in that it is both a regeneration story and a post-regeneration story. That's one of the more meta nods, at least one that I pick up, or one I read on. And then there's other things, like there is a direct allusion to Last of the Time Lords that I will talk about later. It is a minor nitpick, but I have issues with that, and that might be a rant. So anyway, yeah, let's get into the specifics of the episode itself and kind of get away from my broad thoughts. Performances are all fantastic across the board. This is one of David Tennant's best performances, not as the 14th Doctor, but as the Doctor. Like, his performance here blows everything he did as the 10th Doctor out of the water. I still think not doing anything different with his characterization is a missed opportunity. I'm always going to think that. But like Wild Blue Yonder, this episode makes the premise really work for it. Catherine Tate is amazing, as she kind of takes Donna's own age and growth that she's had since leaving the Doctor and kind of applies it to be a better friend for the Doctor. Like, she sees the way the Doctor is handling this and tries to be there for him. And she has some great moments on her own as well. We also get the unit team back. We have Ruth Madley as Shirley. We have Bonnie Langford as Mel as a member of unit, like I said. And we get Gemma Redgrave as Kate Stewart. And easily, by far, this is the best Kate Stewart has ever been written. Easily. Bar none. You know, like, in the past, TV stories have always just said she's the Brigadier's daughter and just really done nothing with her. Like, they expected her to just stand on her own with the notoriety of Brigadier's daughter. But here, she actually gets a bit of a character. Like, when the Doctor arrives at Unit HQ, the first thing she does is hug him. And you can clearly see she is terrified by what's going on here. Also, another side tangent here, because, you know, with this new era of Doctor Who, Russell T Davies is trying to MCU it. He has rebranded it as the Hooniverse, and he has said that spin-offs are in the work. He has been very tight-lipped about what the spin-offs are, but there has been speculation from the fandom. And I do want to say that, again, nothing has ever been confirmed, but from here, we get a full cast, essentially. We have Ruth. I'm sorry, I called her by her actress's name. We have Shirley, Kate, Mel, the Vlinks, an alien that seems to be working for UNIT, Colonel Ibrahim, and possibly, depending on how a conversation on what evolves from a conversation in this episode, Donna. So I think this episode is pretty much confirmation. Again, we'll see what happens, that there is going to be a UNIT spinoff. Because like I said, they have an HQ, they have a full team, a full cast ready to go. But the standout performance in this entire story is Neil Patrick Harris as the Toy Maker. He just hits this right combination of charming and unsettling and charismatic and creepy. And there are a bunch of nods to the Celestial Toymaker, the original story as well. Like, one thing a lot of people headcanon that I do kind of really agree with is the reason the Toymaker keeps switching accents. He'll use an American accent, a French accent, primarily a German accent, he'll use a British accent, is because the first Doctor defeated him in that story by throwing his voice and imitating the Toymaker. So now the Toymaker is throwing his voice and doing all these different voices and accents, so the Doctor can't do that again. It's a really fun nod. I also think it's kind of a reference to the fact that the Celestial Toymaker, the story itself, the first Doctor story, is kind of really racist. People have been trying to defend the story forever, but it has some pretty serious racist undertones. For the longest time, because of poorly developed photographs, people thought that Michael Goff, who played the Toymaker in the original story, was in yellowface. He's not, but there are other racist aspects of that story, including an infamous dropping of the N slur. But there are other aspects to it. The Toymaker is dressed as a Mandarin and does play on those old racist tropes of Chinese people, of Mandarins, as power-mad, crazed dictators. Not to mention the fact that it is both using it in the more astronomical context, but it is also very clearly using it in the old-timey context. Celestial used to be a racial slur for Chinese people. So I feel like, in a way, what Neil Patrick Harris and what Russell T Davies are doing are kind of calling out the more racist undertones of that story. But Harris also perfectly captures the cosmic threat of the Toymaker. He has this great scene towards the climax of this great speech towards the climax of the story, where he says his appearance is only a face, hiding something much more horrific. And I do think Davies portrays that really well. I do kind of wish most of this story took place in the Toymaker's realm. I will say, because once they go back to reality, I feel like that's kind of where it drops off a little bit. Not too bad, not until the climax. Don't worry, we're getting to it. But again, I just have a lot of thoughts here on this overall. And I just went blank on what they are. Oh, well, okay, so we will move on, because let's talk about the thing that is sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Oh, wait, backtrack a little bit. I do like the explanation for why the Toymaker is here, because, again, in the first Doctor story, the TARDIS was sort of taken out of the universe, and it's really weird, especially the way this story explains it. But yeah, it was essentially in a weird subspace. And what happened is, at the edge of the universe in Wild Blue Yonder, when the Doctor evoked the superstition with the salt, that, vampires cannot cross a line of salt without counting every single individual grain, that superstition kind of allowed the Toymaker to, and evoked at the edge of the universe, allowed the Toymaker to creep in. So now, okay, I think that's everything I have because most of my thoughts are about, again, the climax, the last 15 minutes, the bi generation. Now, in and of itself, I don't love it, but I could have made peace with it. That's the easiest way to explain it. And then Russell T Davies had to go and and comment on it. So I think the headcanon that most people are explaining. So basically, the Toymaker kills the 14th Doctor. Let's start with that. And he's the one who causes the regeneration. And what ends up happening is that the Doctor comments it feels different. So, and what ultimately ends up happening is that the 15th Doctor appears, but instead of a regeneration, he and the 14th Doctor split in two. Again, just to reiterate, I could have made peace with this. I don't know if I'd ever like it, but I could have made peace with it. We're going to talk about the thing that kind of ruins it in a sec, but because I seen this online, and I do kind of like this idea that the reason for the bigeneration, which the 15th Doctor mentions is a myth, is because of the Toymaker. You know, the Toymaker does not adhere to the rules of reality. And in confronting and facing the Toymaker, the Doctor has to play the game by his rules. He's not playing it by the rules of reality. So, you know, the Toymaker's influence is what caused the bigeneration. And then behind the scenes, they uploaded a clip of Russell T Davies' commentary, where he said retroactively every regeneration was a bigeneration. Russell. And this is really what gets me mad. Like I said, and this is where my frustration comes in. Like I said, I'm going to say it one more time. I don't know if I ever would have liked the idea, but I could have made peace with it if it was a novel idea. I don't know if the show itself will ever comment on it. It would be best if it didn't. But the fact that Russell retroactively went and made every regeneration a bigeneration, it is no longer a novel idea. And just, again, leave it to Russell to come up with the stupidest idea. And it's a shame, too, because this also, because 60th anniversary and David Tennant coming back, this also overshadows Ncuti Gatwa's introduction as the 15th Doctor. Like, I feel like because these specials are for David Tennant as the 14th Doctor, you lose a little bit of Gatwa's fantastic introduction. I loved his energy. I loved the 15th Doctor pretty immediately. Didn't like, and I get the idea, you see it, he's kind of wearing half the 14th Doctor's costume. Didn't like that he spent his entire screen time in this special not wearing pants. That seemed juvenile. It seemed like a juvenile joke that was just unfunny. And also, this is where my comment got that this is kind of a meta anniversary nod to Time in the Ronnie, being both a regeneration story and a post-regeneration story. But again, it just, Gatwa had a really good introduction. I loved his energy. He did a really great performance for the brief screen time he had. But again, it was just overshadowed by the 60th anniversary and the fact that David Tennant was still there. Granted, too, that, you know, this is David Tennant's episode. This isn't Ncuti Gatwa's episode. It's a thing. It's a thing. Like I said, just, again, the bigeneration being a concept I don't like on paper, but could have made peace with, combined with Russell T Davies' comments that really ruin it, to, you know, the fact that we got our new Doctor's introduction, but still overshadowed by the previous Doctor. A lot of it doesn't work. And there are other things that don't work. First, the mini rant on the thing that is ultimately inconsequential to this episode. Earlier in the episode, while playing a game with the Doctor, the Toymaker mentions he found the Master, played a game with him, the Master lost, so the Toymaker turned him into a gold tooth. when the Toymaker was defeated, we saw that gold tooth was left behind, and we saw a woman's hand picked it up. Again, this is a very deliberate nod to Last of the Time Lords, where after the Master was cremated, we saw a woman's hand pick up his ring. It is deliberately evoking that in the anniversary special. But New Who, stop explaining the Master. Please. We don't need to know how he survives or how he comes back. And there is a perfect example of this. And we're going back to Classic Who. In the 5th Doctor era, the Master story in Peter Davison's final season, Planet of Fire, the Master ended up being incinerated. The Master then showed up again in the 6th Doctor story, Mark of the Ronnie. And I don't know how to rip from sources, so I'm going to reenact it. When he shows up, he and the Ronnie have this brief exchange. I thought your last scheme had finished you off for good. My dear Ronnie, I'm indestructible. The whole universe knows that. You don't need to explain how the Master survives. The only explanation you should ever give is it's the Master. My God, the Chibnall era got this right. Then again, compared to Davies or Moffat, the Chibnall era got most things right. Neither here nor there. But please, leave the Master's return ambiguous. You don't need to explain it. Any other things? Well, that was kind of the big thing with the mini rant. And then there is one more thing with the 15th Doctor's introduction I don't like. Actually, before we do, I do kind of want to... No, I'll save that. So we can kind of end on a positive note. So, once again, this episode kind of does the New Who thing of calling out the Doctor's mental state, of kind of calling out, the strain that their constant adventuring since their first incarnation has done. But every time New Who has done this, at least to me, it's always felt superficial. It's felt very surface level with no actual meaning because it has no impact and it's never addressed again. And it's kind of done at its worst here because the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, makes a comment to the 14th Doctor, I am you after all that. So it feels like, once again, we're setting up this kind of very interesting, very deep character arc where the Doctor realizes sort of their mental flaws and the strain they've put themselves through and kind of need to get help or therapy or something. And then, because the series is going to follow the 15th Doctor, we just get that hand waved away. Nope, that's not important. This is about me now. Davies. I hate this man's ideas. Okay, sorry. The one thing I will say is I do kind of like the ending with the 14th Doctor. On the one hand, I don't like it because it means the 14th Doctor is still out there, and much like Meta Crisis, it means that, David Tennant Doctor is still out there, seemingly because RTD cannot let a David Tennant era end. But I will say, it feels like it could happen, who knows, but we said that about Meta Crisis, and here we are, over 10 years later. But it feels like this is a much more definitive ending for the 14th Doctor. It feels like if the regeneration had never happened, if we had never seen the 15th Doctor, this does feel like a very definitive ending. This feels like the way you could have ended the show. But yeah, the Giggle is, through and through, it is a Russell T Davies finale. Very strong start with some interesting ideas, until he applies them in the stupidest way possible and crashes and burns by the end. But those are just my thoughts. What are your thoughts on the Giggle? Please start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my socials where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time, because the 60th anniversary specials might be over, but the specials aren't. So join me next time. I don't remember the release date, I'm sorry, when we will get Shooty Gatwa's first episode, the 2023 Christmas special, The Church in Ruby Road.